This year at Whisky Wednesday, a lot of our focus has been on bargains of the year, and very much so of the two whiskies that are going to make the list for the short list anyway for Whisky of the Year this year. Our RP on them is maximum £50. A new contender is in the ring because this only cost £45, and it's a blended malt of 25-year-old Springbank, 25-year-old Glen Scotia, and then an undisclosed Campbeltown blended malt, which I assume, but do not know, is probably sort of Glen Scotia and Kilkerran, or Springbank and Glen Scotia, or something like that. This has been put together by the folks over at North Star with this stunning sort of throwback early 1900s travel photo. Reminds me of something that you'd see in Red Dead Redemption, or Red Dead Redemption 2. Put together by Ian Croucher, and with maybe on his own or with a little help from other people. This is a 50.7% ABV blended malt, a 10-year-old minimum, with some 25-year-old stocks in it. Now, I do not have the exact breakdown, but what I can tell you, if this is floating your boat and you like the idea of it, I'm looking at North Star's website right now, and it's still available for £45 a bottle, which is insane. Minimum 10 years old, but with guaranteed 25-year-old stocks in it. The percentages, we don't know. There could be loads of it in there, there might not be a lot, but it comes with a beautiful red wax seal. You've got a very small amount of information on the back, and then all I like here is this is put across as almost like ticket stubs with the Springbank and the Glen Scotia numbers in there. But yeah, unreal, amazing bargain, amazing price, opens up the world of blended malts to people even more, and here it is in the glass. Give this a little swirl so we can give you folks an idea of viscosity. North Star, what can I tell you about North Star? Very intriguing independent bottling company. Some of the best single casks I tried in the last couple of years working for a retailer came from North Star, whether it was their single malt single casks, some of their blended malt stuff. I believe it was the Vega range, which was like super old blended whiskey. I honestly can't remember because I tried it at the end of a tasting and I was pretty far gone by that point. But this is the viscosity of this stuff. Hopefully it will focus on the glass and not me. But it's just lining it. As you'd imagine, it's natural colour with no chill filtration. Let's smell, let's taste, let's talk to you about what is probably going to be another contender for Whisky of the Year. Now, I will say on the opening part, it isn't necessarily all about that funky Campbeltown nature. The leading note for me is grapefruit, which is quite unusual because I think we mentioned grapefruit on a Glen Scotia review, and I've also mentioned that I've been messing around with tequila and mezcal a fair bit more. Reviews to come, and they're always obviously quite grapefruit led. Not always, but the ones I have are. And this is grapefruit. It's like super ripe strawberry, like it's juicy and tart. There's a very trebly note in it, and this is probably my third glass of this since it arrived at the house. It's almost like, it's not an unusual note, but it's just not a note I typically associate with Springbank or Glen Scotia, and it's very much this bright, tart, kind of sour green apple note. But that with the grapefruit, there's so much salt to it as well. Like that combination of grapefruit and salt is unreal when it comes to the aroma on this thing. And at 50.7, and a minimum of 10 years old, it's kind of still zingy and tangy, and it feels like it's fizzing up and down your nostril. Considering I'm sat here with you today, absolutely sweating in this office with a very bright light on a humid, cloudy day where it's like 24 degrees Celsius, this comes across as really refreshing and really clean to smell. For any of you that have had the privilege of trying very old Springbank, it always comes across as really tropical. It's always pineapple-y and guava and mango. Old Glen Scotia can vary quite a bit from the ones I've experienced. They're really light. The 25-year-old, even the 18-year-old, have had the ability to try the 50-year-old recently, the new release. And that was surprisingly like buoyant as a flavour. It was really up here. It wasn't the heaviest sort of flavour profile. Yeah, the nose now, it's all of that vanilla-y, bourbon-y goodness and grapefruit and salt and zinginess and tanginess. Also this really nice caramelised banana note in it. Anyway, let's taste it. It really comes alive on the palate. It's so much fun to drink on, and the finish is quite unusual. The finishes are really interesting. This isn't a very typical Springbank led flavour, and bar means that undisclosed blended malt is in there as the base with the 10-year-old. I don't actually know what the components of that are. This drink's a little bit more like Kilkerran. It's a bit saltier. It's certainly not peat driven. I wouldn't talk about peat at all with this thing. It starts off quite gentle and oily. It really starts to fill every sort of corner of your mouth. And then as you move it around your palate, saltiness and spiciness become this two sort of dominant figures here. They're almost fighting for who wants to take control of everything. There is a tiny bit of smoke in it. If you look for it, you will find it, but it's something that I'm only really getting on the finish right now. That spiciness too, it comes across more like, there's an element of barrel spice to it, but there's also this sort of, there's a little bit of chili spice. You could definitely say like black pepper and stuff like that. But the finish is where this thing has got some really unusual notes. It really is really nutty. It's really dry. It has this like walnut, salted peanut thing going on with it. A final note that I got just before we tasted it of like caramelised banana. That, with those nutty profiles, really finishes this thing off. It doesn't drink sweet, despite what I've just said with this caramelised banana-y thing. It really does lead the way with saltiness and spiciness. But because you get that dry, nutty flavour, and that caramel layer sort of comes in, it just feels, again, quite cleansing, quite refreshing, very welcoming. Just incredibly well put together. So fair play to Ian and your team, because this is an absolute delight, especially for the money. Like, you know, when was the last time you bought a bottle of whiskey for £45, which you knew was nearly 51% ABV and had two 25-year-old whiskies in it? Unreal. Smelling it again, the caramel thing is there a little bit more. Still, salty grapefruit, tangy sort of flavours. I will say on the second sip, the peat made itself a little bit more well known. Almost like a sprinter. It appears as like, hello, and then just goes straight away. Oh, it's a little bit more herbaceous now. It's almost like piney. We'll add a little bit of water to it. I'm just intrigued to know what happens. That was quite a lot of water. Around, see what goes on. The saltiness explodes if you choose to add water to it. And the nose does start to remind me more of Kilkerran and Glen Scotia. Imagine if I'm wrong and there's no Kilkerran in this. I'll be proven to be a fool, which isn't the first time, to be fair. It does come across as a lot more youthful if you do add water. So that peanutty note at the end, that's still there if you add water to it. But what you do get, if you do add water, is a little bit more of that Springbank funkiness. There's almost like really sweet brioche bread that's covered in peanut butter and like chocolate, and it's still really nutty. I might take the award for the nuttiest bottle of whiskey I've ever tried, apart from some really unusual bourbons. But I love this stuff. This is like the definition of a whiskey to study, because I feel that the further down I get from this bottle, the more interesting and unusual it could get. Certainly with those 25-year-old elements reeling around here. If anyone from North Star does see this video, I would be intrigued to know the percentages, but I doubt you're going to release anything like that. But you never know. You don't get if you don't ask. But this is brilliant. I adore this thing. It's such a fun, affordable, interesting bottle of whiskey. This walks with an 8.5. If you're into Campbeltown and you just want to experience this fun, unique blended malt whiskey, I don't think there's really anything on the market currently which puts this aside anything else. You can go for a classic Campbeltown single malt like the Glen Scotia 15 we reviewed last week. If you can get your hands on a bottle of Springbank, you know, fair play. Kilkerran's a lot easier to get hold of these days too. It's a solid 8.5 out of 10 from me. Thank you to the folks at North Star, because that is delightful, and it goes against the grain of everything else which is currently happening in the whiskey industry. It's an age-stated, high-strength blended malt whiskey for below £50. Given what even more famous indie bottlers who put blended malts together are charging for their whiskies these days, it's not much more than that, but it is starting to creep up quite a bit more too. So fair play, North Star. I think you've always been in everyone's good books anyway. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.